Hi, I'm Julie Johnson with Firebox Training. Today I'm going to show you how to create a BI Publisher report based on a JDBC connection, and then we're going to perform a little bit of report bursting, which means our end result will be some PDF files with they're going to be reports that are separated out by some kind of criteria. So the first thing that we want to do, suppose you're logged into the OBIEE environment. Let me just click on Home here. This is our OBI environment right here. And if you have administrative privileges, then you'll see this link here that says Administration. You want to go there to manage your JDBC resources for your reports. Okay, so once you click on that, you go to Manage BI Publisher, and then you click on JDBC Connection. Okay, so what I'm going to do in here is create a new data source. So here I'll say Add Data Source. Let me call my data source OE. This is going to be based on the schema called OE. Okay, so you can get this schema from Oracle. You can just Google, download OE schema. You'll be able to find it. Okay, so next we're going to stick with this database driver class. That should be fine. The connection string is where you want to provide the information about your database. So the SID, or the unique identifier of my database, is ORCL. Let me make this a little bit larger. And then the port number where my database is port 1521. That's the standard port for an Oracle database. And the host name for me is going to be localhost. Now, for your database, it might be some other connection string. You need to talk to your database administrator. Next, I'm going to type in the username of the schema that we're connecting to, and then the password. So for me, the password is also OE. So before I save this, let me just go ahead and hit Test Connection, and let's see what we've got here. It tells us that everything is good. Okay, so what we're going to do, connection established successfully, so we're going to now hit apply, and so there it is. So now we have our data source. Well, what's next? Well, let's go to the data model. So here we can say New Data Model. And this is where we're going to define what our report is based on within that schema. Okay, so within here, I can click on this icon to create a new data set. My data set is going to be based on a SQL query. Okay, so I'm going to call my data set, let me just call this OE orders. Okay, and I'm going to make sure it's based on the OE data source. And if I'm proficient enough in SQL, which I am, I can just start typing what the query is. Or if you want to use more of a graphical interface to help you build your query, you can do that as well. Let me just use the query builder. I'll click on that. And so you can see here that it's looking at the OE schema, and it tells us what tables are in the OE schema. So I want to place in here orders, so I click on that. And I also want to have order items. Okay, so there's a relationship between these two tables. Okay, so do you see what they have in common here? There's an order ID, which is the unique identifier for an order. And then under order items, we have an order ID. These are going to be connected. So the way we connect these is we click here. Okay, so this is going to be referencing this guy right there, and now they're connected. So what that does behind the scenes is it creates a join on, it creates a where clause with a join. Okay, so let's look at the resulting SQL that we have so far. Actually, let me go back to the model. I'm going to check the columns that I want to include in my query. So let me include the order ID, the order date, maybe the customer ID, and the order total. And then I can also include these line items. Maybe I want to get the, maybe I want to do the line item ID, unit price, and quantity. Okay, so under here, for conditions, this is where we can add whatever conditions we want. This would get tacked onto the where clause. Let's just see what our SQL looks like so far. Here we have our select statement that it's going to generate. Okay, and so I'm going to just save what I have so far. Okay, this is what we have so far. You can see that we can go in here and actually edit things as well. If we want to perform an order by down here, we can do that. How about I say, let's order by the order ID. Okay. Okay, good. So now we're going to hit OK. And it looks like this. So this is the diagram. I know it has kind of a strange name, but this is what the diagram looks like. You can place aggregate functions in here if you want to do like sum, min, max, things like that. Here, if you look at the structure, this is the data source. And this is where you can define the sorting order. You can specify a value to display if the actual value happens to be null. And then, so this is the XML view and this is the business view. We're not going to modify any of this right now. Here, let's take a look at the data. Okay, so here, if we want to just see see this in tree view, we can see what the first 5 rows would look like. Okay, or if we want to see this in more of a table view, this gives us an idea of what our data set looks like. So this is great because by default it's only just capturing the first 5 rows. If we have, thousands of rows, we don't want it to crunch too much information. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to save this as my sample data. Okay, so when I save this as sample data, that sample data is going to be used by our report layout. Okay, so we have to have some sample data, and we have it. Okay, so this last tab is just the XML code behind all this. You won't need to modify this at all. In fact, you're not able to modify it. Okay, so that is our data model. Okay, so in a later video tutorial, we can talk about how to create, lists of values, or how to make this more of a parameterized kind of report where we allow the end user to interact. But let's just keep this simple for right now. Okay, so we have our data model. Right now, our data model has not been named, so we want to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to save this. Let me just put this under shared folders, and I'm going to create a folder called My Reports and Data Models. Okay, and the name of this, we'll just call this OE Data Model. Okay, so now it is a saved object. If I go to my catalog here, you can see that here's that folder, here's my data model. What can we do with the data model? Well, we can edit it, we can make changes, or we can just, view the data. Okay, so this is where you modify your data model. Now, what if we want to create a report based on this data model? Well, let's go in here. We'll say New Report. And one of the questions it's going to ask us here is what data model is this based on? Okay. Okay, so here we can either use a data model, we can upload a spreadsheet, or we can use an OBIEE subject area. I'm going to use a data model. I'm now going to search for it. There it is. Okay, now how do you want to create the report? I'm just going to use the report editor. And now we'll go ahead and hit finish. Okay, so I want to save this. I'll save it under the same folder just for convenience. And I'm going to call this OE Orders Report. Okay, now we have all sorts of templates that are available out of the box. Okay, we can create one from scratch, or we can use one of the existing templates. Let's go ahead and put in here a header and footer, just a template that contains a header and footer that's in portrait mode. and here we have it. So from here we can drag and drop various objects. I like to get into the habit of saving often. Okay, so anytime we need to save our changes, just click this icon up here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just get to the meat of this. I want to drag a data table right in here. Okay, and now we have this little text here that says drop a data item here. Okay, so this is where I can just start dragging items onto here. Let's grab the order ID. Let's get the order date, the customer ID. Let's get the line item ID as well. And the unit price. Okay. Now, cannot insert the column because there is not enough space. Okay, so obviously we need to make some changes here. I'm going to move this over a little bit. We can, instead of getting really granular here with the time, we can modify the formatting of the order date just to show the date. You can see here we can make that a little shorter. Okay, there's the line item ID. Now let's get the unit price. Make this a little narrower. And then finally the quantity. Okay, so for alignment, let's nicely align. You know, you can highlight all these. You can hit your control key and highlight these. And, you know, change the formatting. Okay, so now that looks good. Now you can see that it's performing a little bit of auto summing in here. And for some of these fields, it might make sense. So for example, the quantity, if you want to add all these up, you get a total of 246. For the unit price, that doesn't really make sense to add all these up. So you might want to select that field and just change the formatting there. Okay, so let's just choose blank text right there. Line item ID, that can be blank text as well. Customer ID, blank text, and this guy right here. Okay, so now let's clean up this date right here. Okay, so I make sure I highlight that, and for the data formatting, I'm going to use this sort of formatting right here. That looks a little bit better. Now see, I can move things around. Okay, this is looking really nice. Okay, let's save what we have so far. Okay, so save layout. So what I'm saving here is a layout. I'm just going to call this order report layout. Okay, and now we're going to hit return. Okay, so you can see here that our order report layout is right here. We can always look at the properties of that. Okay, there's support for translations for other languages if we want to. That's beyond the scope of this tutorial though. Let's hit return again. If you want to go to editing the layout, you can go back. That will just take you to the edit page again. What if we want to view the report? Okay, so here we have our report, and this is not just looking at the first 5 rows, this is looking at all of our data. Okay, so here we have all of these lines right in here. Okay, so we have the unit price and quantity. If we wanted to have yet another column in there that's the unit price times the quantity to give the total amount, we could do that. But this is what our report looks like so far. Okay, so here I can then export this to PDF format if I want to, but right now I'm not real happy with my final product because it's not real informative. I haven't put any headers or footers in there. So let me edit this layout, and let's go to the header section right up here, and this is where we can insert a text item. Okay, so right in here we can say OE orders report. Okay, now I want to make this font a little bit larger. Let's go with like 18 point. Oh, that looks better. Okay, now let's go ahead and run this report. So we just want to make sure this is saved, and then we return back here. And what I'd like to do is just go to my catalog, and here is the report. We're going to schedule this, okay? So let's just say schedule, and we'll just do an ad hoc report run. So here is the full path of the report. It doesn't take any parameters. The output is we're going to save the data for republishing if we want to later. Here is going to be the output. Here we can just call this basic order report. Call it whatever you want. There's the layout. Here's the format. Let's save this to PDF. Locale. Let's change the time zone here. And there we go. We're going to save the output. Now, I'm going to save this to a destination later on, but right now let's just make sure that we get some results. Okay, so I'm going to click on here on schedule, frequency once, run now. Okay, great. Let's submit that report. We're going to call this basic OE report and then hit OK. So this is good. It says it was successfully submitted. And so now we can go back to our catalog, and right in here we can click on the history, and it's going to go in order of when it was kicked off, so it gives us the timestamp. And here, if I want to look at the results, I can now click on this and it will show me what it looks like. Okay, so right now everything is in one single report. What would be really nice is if we did some report bursting, where we actually have reports that are grouped by certain criteria. So for example, we could have one report for each unique order. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So that's called report bursting. I'm going to go to my catalog, and to define the report bursting, we actually want to go to our data model, and we're going to hit edit. And you'll see down here that there's a little section for bursting. So to enable bursting, I hit the plus right there, and we're going to just call this, we're going to burst this to a file instead of, through email or anything like that. So file bursting. This will be based on a SQL query. My data source is going to be OE, and right down here is where I define what I'm splitting by. So in other words, for each report, I want it to be split by perhaps the order ID. And deliver by, well, since this is all just going to go into one folder, I'm going to actually deliver by order ID as well. But if I was sending this to an email, I might want to deliver by customer ID, and so have each distinct customer receive any number of order reports. But let me just keep this simple here. And now for the SQL query, I'm going to paste this in here, and then I'm going to explain what's going on here. Okay, so let's move this up a bit. The deliver by, I said, is order ID. I want to make sure that that is the same thing as the key down here. So I'm going to say select distinct order ID key. Okay, so that's going to be the key. So this guy right here always has to be the same as the deliver by. Then we need to specify the template that we're using. Okay, so order report layout is the template that we're using. The format is RTF. The locale is ENUS. The output format is PDF. And here we specify the channel. So we're going to be bursting this to a file. Other options might include email or FTP or printer. And so depending on what type of channel you're choosing here, the next two parameters or next several parameters might be a little bit different. Okay, so if we are bursting to a file, then the parameter 1 has to be the directory where we are bursting this to, and then parameter 2 needs to be the name of the file. Okay, so this is all going to go under users, student, my reports, and then the name of the file is going to be the literal word order and then whatever the order ID is, .pdf. Okay, so let me make sure that I have the correct order by right here. Okay, so before I hit OK, let me just copy this and perform this query in this window right here. I'm going to just paste this right in here. And you can see here that it's going to be generating a bunch of distinct order numbers. Okay, so now that that looks good, let's go ahead and save this. Now we're going to go to our catalog. We want to go to our layout here. We're going to edit it. Now this is a really important thing. We want to, just because we defined bursting didn't mean that we actually enabled it. So we are editing our layout. We want to go to our properties and we want to say enable bursting. And there is the file bursting that shows up in the drop-down. Okay, looks good. I'll hit OK right there. Okay, now what I'd like to do is go to the catalog. Here's my layout. I'm going to schedule this. Okay, so no parameters. The output, let's see here. Use bursting definition to determine output and delivery destination. Schedule, run right now. Okay, so let's submit this and we'll call this file bursting report. And it says it was successfully submitted, so now let's go to the catalog and let's go to the history. Okay, so there's our file bursting report. Scroll down a little bit. Look at all of this. This shows us all the different parts here. If we want to get a little more information about this, we can. I just want to verify that it's actually in that folder. So let me go to my folders here. I'm going to Users, Student, My Reports, and look at all those. Let me just open up one of these. Okay, so that looks pretty nice. Okay. And that is the basics of report bursting. Well, I hope you got a lot out of this video tutorial. Please visit our website at www.fireboxtraining.com.